Today, we're diving into a story that feels like part tech thriller, part digital civil war. It's all about how one of the most important inventions of our time, Bitcoin, might have been completely twisted away from what its creator ever wanted. And we're pulling this incredible story straight from Roger Ver's book, Hijacking Bitcoin. So let's get right into it.
Everything really starts right here. And this isn't just some subtitle, this is the actual title of Satoshi Nakamoto's original 2008 white paper. The book really hammers this home. This was Bitcoin's mission statement. It was meant to be a new kind of cash for the internet that you could send directly between any two people on Earth. Simple as that. And that's really the million-dollar question, isn't it? A system designed to be cash, a system that was supposed to make online payments direct and easy. But, if you've ever tried to actually use Bitcoin today, you've probably had a very different experience. And yeah, that brings us right to the heart of the book's argument, stated pretty bluntly by the author himself, who was one of Bitcoin's earliest evangelists. It's a huge claim that the Bitcoin we all know as BTC today is not the project he and so many others signed up for. And in this explainer, we're going to unpack exactly why he says that. Okay, so if we're going to understand this whole hijacking claim, we first have to get a handle on what the book presents as Bitcoin's original promise. And it was a vision that, at the time, pretty much everyone agreed on, a new kind of money for the world. And what's so wild, and what the author points out, is just how specific Satoshi was. He digs up old forum posts where Satoshi was talking about Bitcoin being practical for micropayments, even for stuff as small as snack machine purchases. I mean, the vision wasn't for these rare multi-million-dollar transfers we see today. It was for everyday, widespread global commerce. And this quote right here, it just perfectly captures the mindset at the time. According to the book, Satoshi saw success as one of two things. It was either going to be used by everybody for everything, which means massive transaction volume, or it was going to fail completely. There was no in-between, no vision for some niche, high-fee network for rich people. Right. So, if the plan was for everybody to use it, what happened? How did we end up with a network that's famous for being slow and expensive? Well, that leads us straight into the great scaling debate, this huge technical and philosophical fight that the book argues changed absolutely everything. At the very heart of this whole fight is one little technical detail, the block size limit. And the book really stresses that Satoshi added this 1 megabyte limit way back in 2010, not as a core feature, but as a temporary spam filter. A quick fix while the network was still young. It was never, ever meant to be a permanent bottleneck. So, this thing that was supposed to be temporary, it ended up tearing the community in two. On one side, you had the big blockers. They wanted to raise the block size, let more transactions through, and keep fees super low, sticking to that original P2P cash vision. And on the other side, the small blockers. They started pushing this new idea of Bitcoin as digital gold, a settlement layer where the block size had to stay small. They argued that this would keep things decentralized and that the high fees it created were actually a good thing that would secure the network. And the small blocker side, they weren't exactly hiding what they wanted. The book pulls up quotes like this one from a Bitcoin core developer, basically saying that high fees weren't some unfortunate bug, they were a feature. The goal was to create this fee market where you'd have to literally outbid other people just to get your transaction through. So what does that actually look like in the real world, this fee market? Well, the book points to times when the network gets busy, and a single transaction could set you back over $20. Yeah, a long, long way from buying something out of a snack machine. All right, this is where the story, according to the book, takes a really dark turn. It argues that this shift in vision wasn't just some natural evolution, it was an active, coordinated takeover. The author just lays out this timeline of events. It kicks off with the founding of Blockstream, a for-profit company that hired several of the most influential Bitcoin core developers. Suddenly, there was fierce resistance to any attempt to raise the block size. At the same time, the book claims the main online discussion forums, like the Bitcoin subreddit, started heavily censoring any talk of bigger blocks. Then came technical changes like replace by fee, which the book says crippled instant payments, and even direct denial of service attacks to shut down anyone who supported the big block vision.
And man, this quote from early developer Mike Hearn to a top core developer, it just drips with this feeling of betrayal. That temporary hack he's talking about, that's the 1 megabyte block size limit. The book uses this to show that developers like Hearn felt the project they'd poured their lives into was being deliberately and dishonestly changed from the inside out.
And this is a really key piece of the puzzle, right? Controlling the conversation.
The book argues that by taking control of the biggest public forums, the small block side could make sure that any newcomers only heard their side of the story. They effectively shut down the debate and painted anyone who disagreed as an enemy of Bitcoin.
So you've got all this tension, all this censorship, all this fighting. I mean, something had to give, right? And it did. It led to the climax of this whole civil war, a massive, messy split that permanently broke the network in two.
The final straw, as the book tells it, was the failure of something called the SegWit 2x compromise. The deal seemed simple enough. Implement a code change the core developers wanted, called SegWit, and in return, do a modest increase of the block size to 2 megabytes. Over 90% of the miners were on board. But then, core supporters launched this aggressive no 2x campaign to kill the deal. And they won. The compromise fell apart, and the block size increase was scrapped.
So the deal was off the table. For the big block side, that was it, the last straw. In August 2017, they decided the only way forward was to split off, to initiate a hard fork. This is what created Bitcoin Cash. And the book claims this new project was explicitly designed to do one thing: preserve and restore Satoshi's original vision of a low-fee, peer-to-peer electronic cash system for the world. And look, this wasn't just some fringe group that was upset. The book uses this quote from Brian Armstrong, the CEO of Coinbase, one of the biggest exchanges on the planet, to show just how widespread this feeling was. The dream of a fast, cheap, global payment system, he says, just wasn't being delivered by BTC anymore.
So where does all that leave us today? What's the fallout from this digital civil war? Well, according to the book, what we have now are two totally different projects, with two completely separate philosophies going down two very different roads.
So let's just break it down side by side based on the book's perspective. You've got Bitcoin, BTC, which is all in on the digital gold idea, a store of value. It's got a small block size, which leads to high and unpredictable fees, and its scaling plan relies on second-layer solutions. Then you have Bitcoin Cash, BCH. It's sticking to that peer-to-peer cash philosophy. The goal is to be a medium of exchange with a huge block size, super low fees, we're talking less than a penny, and a plan to scale everything right on the main blockchain.
And that's really the punchline of the whole book. The author argues that Bitcoin Cash isn't some altcoin. It's a restoration of what Bitcoin was always supposed to be. And that BTC, by choosing to limit itself and embrace high fees, has basically turned into a completely different animal.
So that's the question we're left with, isn't it? Was this a hostile takeover that derailed Bitcoin's original mission, or was it just a necessary evolution, finding a new, maybe more realistic use case as digital gold? The book definitely makes its case, and it makes it very, very clear.
But one thing is absolutely certain. This fight over the heart and soul of Bitcoin is nowhere near finished. These two competing visions are still out there, developing on parallel tracks. And according to this story, the final chapter in the history of peer-to-peer electronic cash is still a long way from being written.